maximum tension. Russia eliminates European flights. A political decision completely changed the way we travel, made prices more expensive, and redefined the balance of economic power between continents. Europe made a decision that, on the surface, sought to weaken Russia. But what it really achieved was strengthening its competitors and passing the cost of that strategy onto the pockets of its own citizens. A political, economic, and geopolitical decision that directly affects millions of people, from travelers who pay more for their flights to companies that face an uncertain future. On February 24, 2022, the world woke up to news that shook the foundations of the international order. Russia had launched an invasion of Ukraine. The West's response was swift and forceful. Europe, along with the United States, began to apply economic and political sanctions against Russia in an attempt to isolate the Kremlin and limit its ability to finance the war. Among the many sanctions that were implemented, one seemingly simple decision stood out: the closure of European airspace to any aircraft with a Russian flag. This meant that no Russian aircraft, whether passenger or cargo, could fly over European territory. At first glance, this measure seemed like a strategic blow. However, European leaders did not calculate an obvious consequence. Russia, in response, also closed its airspace to European flights. And this is where the real problem began. Russia, the largest country in the world, is not only a military power, but it is also the natural bridge between Europe and Asia. Its vast territory connects two of the most important regions on the planet, and the air routes that pass over its airspace are the shortest and most efficient for traveling from one continent to another. With the mutual closure of airspace, European airlines were forced to look for alternative routes. And those new routes, although possible, came with a huge cost. Avoiding Russian airspace may sound simple in theory, but in practice it is a monumental logistical and economic challenge. Let's take as an example a typical flight between Helsinki, Finland, and Beijing, China. Before the airspace closure, this flight covered just over 4,000 miles. Now, without being able to cross Russia, the distance is increased by 2,000 miles. That equates to almost 4 additional hours in the air. 4 more hours of flight are not a mere inconvenience. Every extra minute in the air represents higher costs for airlines, more fuel, a resource whose price is already sky high, more working hours for pilots and crew, who must be paid for their additional time, increased wear and tear on aircraft, which increases maintenance costs, additional meals for passengers, and an increase in flight insurance. The result of all this is that European airlines face an impossible dilemma: raise ticket prices, losing customers in the process, or absorb the additional costs, sacrificing their profitability. In many cases, the only solution has been to cancel entire routes. But while Europe struggles with longer routes and higher costs, its competitors in Asia are seizing the opportunity. China and India, countries that have not publicly condemned Russia for the invasion of Ukraine, continue to use Russian airspace without restrictions. This allows them to operate shorter, cheaper, and more efficient flights between Asia and Europe. Today, Chinese airlines account for 77% of air traffic between Europe and China, a drastic increase from the 50% they had before the pandemic. In countries like Italy, Asian airlines control 100% of the market, and in the United Kingdom, 95%. As European airlines like Lufthansa, British Airways, and Air France suspend routes to Asia because they are no longer profitable, Chinese companies like Air China and China Eastern Airlines are opening new routes to Europe. In fact, Air China already operates 53 daily flights between both continents, 116% more than in 2019. What is Europe doing? Europe's reaction has been, to say the least, controversial. Some European airline executives have called for drastic measures to level the playing field, from imposing taxes on Asian airlines to banning them from entering the continent if they use Russian airspace. But these proposals do not address the underlying problem, the need to reopen Russian airspace. However, to achieve this, Europe would have to sit down and negotiate with Russia. And as long as the conflict in Ukraine continues, this possibility seems remote. Global economic consequences. The air blockade is just the tip of the iceberg. European sanctions against Russia have had a devastating impact on the continent's economy. Europe's dependence on Russian gas, for example, has led to an unprecedented energy crisis. With Russian gas supplies cut off, European countries have had to resort to liquefied natural gas from the United States, which is much more expensive and less efficient. This has made life more expensive for European citizens, driven up production costs for businesses, and reduced the continent's competitiveness in the international market. And while Europe struggles with these difficulties, the United States has seized the opportunity to strengthen its position in the global energy market. US liquefied natural gas exports to Europe have reached record levels, generating billions of dollars in revenue for US energy companies. The big winner, China. In the end, the biggest beneficiary of all this chaos is neither Europe nor Russia. It's China. As Europe loses competitiveness, China is consolidating its position as an economic and commercial giant. Its airlines dominate the air market between Asia and Europe, and its companies are taking advantage of European weakness to expand their influence in other sectors. What does the future hold? With 2025 just around the corner, the outlook remains uncertain. Can world powers find a solution that benefits everyone? Or will we continue to see how political decisions continue to harm ordinary citizens while the big economic players take advantage? What is clear is that every decision has consequences, and the closure of airspace between Europe and Russia is a reminder that economic sanctions not only affect those who are being sanctioned, but also those who impose them. Putin's role in Russia's decision to block European flights is paramount. His leadership and strategies have led to this situation, with repercussions not only for Europe, but for the entire world. In this segment, we will delve into the reasons and consequences of his actions. Vladimir Putin, known for his calculating approach, has been a central figure in this crisis. His decision to close Russian airspace to European flights was not taken lightly. It was a direct response to the sanctions imposed by Europe. The reasons behind this decision are complex. On the one hand, it is a show of force, a warning to the West that Russia will not give in to external pressure. On the other hand, it is a tactic to protect Russia's economic and political interests. The consequences of this decision are far-reaching. Not only has it changed air routes and increased flight costs, but it has also exacerbated tensions between Russia and Europe. The impact on ordinary travelers, airlines, and the economies of both sides is considerable. Putin has made a risky move, and only time will tell if this strategy will pay off or if it will generate greater isolation and difficulties for Russia. What is clear is that his role in this crisis is undeniable, and his influence on the world stage remains formidable. With each move in this power game, the pieces are rearranged and the consequences are felt in all corners of the world. The story is far from over, and the decisions made in the coming months will be decisive for the future of international relations.